Welcome back. Looking at technology as our SVR. Now we can kill two dot points in one here. So we have technology as our dot point here, and that's looking at the SVR. But then we have another one which is emerging social exclusion resulting from limited access to modern technologies and communication and its implications. So that's another dot point within this syllabus. So we can literally kill two birds in one stone here because this is something we're going to be looking at anyway. How good's that? So, quick recap. Why is technology an important socially valued resource and which human right does it relate to? Hint, hint, it's this one. Alright, overview. Spelling mistake, not good. Technology is an integral part of contemporary Australian society, and in fact any contemporary society across the world. We look at globalization and the requirement of even just having access to the internet and the opportunities that that gives you is insane. So it's very important, okay, especially in the modern world. Aboriginal individuals and groups, they rely on technology, same as everyone else, for communication, for employment, and for engagement in social and cultural activities. Now, whether that's messaging a mate to go out for drinks, or whether that's looking at upcoming schedules or tours for a favourite band or DJ if you're a young whippersnapper like yourselves, or even cultural activities, looking at what's on the internet and that sort of thing when you're travelling. So technology is very important for a number of reasons. Even if you think about how much, check out your screen time if you can. How many hours a day you're spending on technology, phone, internet, etc. So really is a really important tool and resource. We look at the world of the social influencers and how much money they're making. If they didn't have access to internet or a phone, they wouldn't be able to do all that. So really is, in the contemporary world, a huge factor. It's a necessity, really. So here's the data comparison. Like we do with each, we look at the numbers. What do the numbers tell us here? If we're comparing to ATSI and non-ATSI, around 6 in 10 or 59% of Aboriginal people live in a household with an internet connection. So that means close to 40% don't. That's a lot. That's nearly half. If you compare that with non-Indigenous, where 8 in 10, or roughly 85-ish%, give or take, of non-Indigenous people. Okay, so that's a lot bigger. That's 15% of people without compared to 40% without. So it's 2.5 times more likely to have no connection to the internet if you are an Aboriginal Australian. Here's a stat that blew my mind. If you are an Aboriginal person, 24 or younger, so young, your guys' age and less, you are less likely to live in a dwelling with an internet connection than anyone over the age of 55 years and over, on average. So 20% less likely to have an internet connection if you're Aboriginal and young, as opposed to an elderly retired person who probably doesn't know how to turn their computer on. They're more likely to have access to the internet than you are. 6% of ATSI residents in remote communities had a computer. If you look at this image, this is what I mean by remote community. So you can see there's a fair few houses here, a little community here. There'd be next to no technological access here. And given the population distribution of Indigenous Australians, where we look about half are in rural or remote, that many are simply unable to use smartphones due to a limited network coverage. So if you look at Telstra, Optus, Virgin Mobile, any of those, they don't service these areas because they don't make enough money. To put a tower out here, to put the service here, to update it, maintain it, they're not going to make any money. In fact, they'll probably lose money if they do it, and that's why there's none here. So we look at the human right here, where everyone has the right to participate freely in and enjoy cultural life and to share in scientific advancements and its benefits. Not everyone is able to do that. So that's a bit of a problem there. Now, you can probably understand, I guess, from the business perspective, why they wouldn't want to do this. But if you look at it from a government perspective and an inequality perspective, then really it's that government's duty to be able to apply for all and help all of its citizens. So by no means am I blaming Optus in general. I'm blaming the system that is government a bit at large here. So the first implication is obviously that you can't participate freely and enjoy cultural life. How much of our cultural life is now dictated by phones, internet, social media? Okay, a lot of it, most of it, especially around your age. So you're not being able to participate freely in that if you don't have access to it. And then the idea to share in scientific advancements and its benefits. When we look at technology and some of the amazing things it can do, you're definitely breaching that human right if you can't access those equally. If we look at rural and remote areas, where a significant proportion, again, if you want to write 50%, they have little to no internet access, and so this prevents them from engaging in globalized social and cultural norms and activities such as social media, even streaming services. TV shows are still a hugely popular entertainment medium. And I mean, we looked at sitcoms last topic. We just know that everyone's on average in Australia is watching 1 hour of that a night, let alone any other sort of Netflix show or television or computer outlets. If you're into gaming, whatever it is, you're not able to participate in those if you have a lack of access to technology. You wouldn't be able to watch my awesome videos that you all love watching if you didn't have access to internet. So there's an issue there too. Second point down is the lack of access to technology for Aboriginal people. It creates further social exclusion, as what I call technological skill and technological literacy is a really implicit requirement. Now, implicit means not advertised but expected. So like an implicit skill for any job in Australia is that you can speak English. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily something you think about, but if you don't have it, then it's really going to significantly impact your chances of being employed. So being able to work a smartphone, being able to know what the internet is, being able to type properly, it's a really implicit requirement and expectation in a lot of contemporary and future-focused jobs. If you don't have those skills, then you're not going to get a job in the future, plain and simple. Even if I look at teaching, just as my own example on how that's changed. I'm doing an online course now. If I didn't know how to use screen recording capture software, download, re-upload to YouTube, add captions, go through privacy issues and stuff, reading that policy on technological things on YouTube and anything like that, I wouldn't be able to do my job effectively for you guys. So every profession has that now, especially since post-COVID. The amount of technological advancement and requirements for people has increased a lot. Now, you might think it's probably not much for you guys. You're all pretty savvy and can work Zoom and work from home and all that, but you got to think people who, especially your parents' age or even 40 or above, were used to jobs not really relying on much technological involvement, whereas all of a sudden they are. Now, the reason I'm making that big point is because if you're an Aboriginal person and you are less likely to have internet than grandma or grandpa who doesn't even know what the internet is, again, that's going to create a huge employment gap and really increase social exclusion, because you're not going to have those implicit technological skills required to be able to get that job or the high-paying job. So you can again see how lack of technology can affect the education, or even education. I mean, a lot of universities do a lot of online sort of style courses now because of COVID and stuff, so that's the way of the future there. So it will affect education, but employment. Okay, so you can see how this lines up to other SVRs too, but it's due to the lack of access to technology. It affects those things there as well. So you can write next to there, i.e. education and employment there. So these fields of work will be increasingly unavailable to Aboriginal people because they simply don't have access to it. And if you think about, one last thing, if you think about, you guys have grown up with it, you're using it since the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, you've got 10, 12, 13 years of experience using technology by the time you finish high school, compared to a lot of Aboriginal people in rural and remote areas who have zero. And how do you catch up? That's 10 years worth of implicit technological work you've been doing. It's as easy as breathing for some of you. So yeah, that's a really big area of social exclusion. Little to no access to technology also creates exclusion, as vulnerable individuals and groups who rely on technological access for a lot of essential services. So things like MyGov, Centrelink Services New South Wales, for any social or economic support. Most of these systems now operate using apps or the internet, okay? Even if you go into Service New South Wales, they'll ask you, hey, you can do this on your phone, or here's our computer over here for you to fill this form out. Off you go, do that. And so if you're living in that rural and remote community and you don't have access to any of that, a lot of the services where you're the person who's most likely to need it and use it can't access it because it's reliant on technology and being able to understand how to use technology. So again, you can see everyone's starting point. That's the big thing. Everyone's starting point and where everyone else starts off. The gap is just huge, and it really impacts and feeds into a lot of other areas. So that's another point there. Lastly, is affordability. It's also a really key issue in terms of Aboriginal technology access. So the prevalence, I think, of mobile-only connectivity in rural and remote areas, that often, so what I mean by, if you look at this picture here, they don't have access to what we call the NBN, the National Broadband Network. So this is a series of cables underground that is everywhere where you and I both live, which gives our house access to internet at a relatively cheap and affordable rate. If you were to, for example, only use internet based off your mobile data, I know every time I confiscate a phone, everyone's turning off their data, so it's not cheap. Whereas mobile data is often the only form of access, if at all, or if any at all, that people can access in a rural and remote area. But if you were to have your whole household internet, we're talking gigs and gigs and gigs of worth of data, just off mobile-only connectivity, then that's very, very expensive. Even if you get those large family plans, they're just huge and they're really expensive. And so that really contributes to social exclusion as well, that even if they do have access to it, and they can access to it, it's very expensive. So there's sort of 4 main key points there for the implications of technology in relation to life chances for Aboriginal people. And as well, if we look at this second dot point, the emerging social exclusion resulting from limited access and its implications, we really see that here in terms of future-focused jobs, education, and accessing those vital services that they need, or that everyone needs. We've followed this one up with the HSC question. So assess the implications resulting from limited access to technology in one group from one country. 2 pills there. Remember, assess is when we make a judgment. So you're going to tell me if something is positive or negative. It doesn't have to be one of each. Especially with this question is looking at what are the implications. So we're really looking at what are the bad things from a limited access. So you're going to have a double negative here of 2 pills. So you get 4 examples here you can look at. Here's some data to help back you up as well. There's your E. So your first E, evidence example. Here's your explanation. So a lot of these have examples in them too, such as the human rights thing as well. So you've got a lot of ammo there to be able to write 2 pills here. And our one group is Aboriginal Australians. Our one country is Australia, as you know. And that's it for today. Good luck.